So we got some more news and updates around Fallout 76. We got word on what the final beta sessions are actually going to be, so the last hours you'll have of the beta. There's actually a pretty big update right now on all platforms, so we're going to look at that. And with that update, we actually got some patch notes so we can see what will actually be fixed. What has Bethesda been paying attention to? So right off the bat, if you're on PC, PS4, or Xbox One, you should try and launch the game or just open your Xbox so the game itself actually does update. For consoles, it's just under 40 gigabytes, and for PC, it's roughly 30 gigabytes. Although don't take this to heart as like some massive change that you should really be paying attention to. Basically, when Bethesda changes a file in an individual archive, you have to re-download that entire archive. So let's say they make a 2 megabyte change to a 5 gigabyte file, you have to download the entire 5 gigabytes. So it really wouldn't be accurate to say we're getting 30 gigabytes of new content and fixes to this game. But for those of you with slow internet, I would queue that up immediately because the next time you can play Fallout 76 is going to be tomorrow. That's going to be from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be another one of these short betas only being 2 hours in length. But then on November 8th, we actually have the final beta time. That's going to be from 2 to 6 p.m., so another one of those 6-hour sessions. And what this seems to indicate is that PlayStation email that I was constantly referencing in my videos is actually not true. In this tweet, Bethesda says our final session schedule is now available, seeming to indicate that yes, November 8th from 2 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time is the final day of the beta. From there, Fallout 76 is going to release on November 14th, but likely actually on November 13th. A lot of times Bethesda will actually release their content the night before based on time zones, so maybe around 7 or 8 p.m. you might be able to download and start playing the game. I certainly will be live streaming it then. But then on to the point that a lot of us are probably wondering about, what new features, content, or fixes are we actually getting with this update? And well, it's honestly not that much. Taking a look at the patch notes, we do have a variety of different performance improvements. Certain bugs on certain platforms were fixed. Some of the most notable, they just kind of mentioned that there's going to be broad stability and performance improvements across the board. What does that actually mean? How much performance improvements are we talking about? I guess we'll just have to wait till tomorrow. Something you will very realistically notice tomorrow, though, is actually some balance changes. So basically, they describe here that a lot of the mid to high level enemies actually became quite a bit more difficult. Mid to high level scorched across the board have gotten improved, while mid to high level super mutants across the board have actually gotten nerfs, so they're going to be slightly weaker. Both of these particularly in the region of health and damage resistance. And it's also mentioned how a lot of mid to high level enemies have gotten their melee damage increased. Particularly they mentioned Mirelurks and Mirelurk Hunters. I don't really know what that means. They say many mid to high level enemies, but then mention 2 specifically. Like, is it many or is it just those 2? It is now more difficult, or rather more expensive, to craft tomahawks and throwing knives, and you can no longer sell them to vendors. These things were super overpowered and relatively cheap to craft, so this is definitely a good balance change. Although I'm kind of curious as to why they make it so you can't sell them to vendors at all. Hopefully that's just a band-aid fix, and in the future they're actually going to further refine this and return the ability to sell them regularly to vendors. The cooldown between events is actually different now. So basically before you could do an event and then complete it and then start it back up again 45 minutes later. Now that time has been increased from 45 minutes to 1 hour 12 minutes. That is a very oddly specific number, and I'm not entirely sure how they came to that. This is personally something I haven't been doing. Maybe there's a good way to farm materials, or there was a good way to farm materials this way. Then there's a bunch of miscellaneous bug fixes. I'm not going to read through all of them, although very tragically T-posing was actually removed when you saw like Scorched or whoever actually just doing the T-pose and running at you. Honestly, I was hoping that was just a feature, and I thought it kind of added a little character to the game. And apparently on Xbox, there was an issue where the world would appear significantly darker than it was intended to. This is something I feel like I somewhat noticed while playing the game, but I wasn't sure if that was, again, just a feature that was meant to be there. There's a few other miscellaneous bug fixes on quests, items, workshops, things like that, but the major things, the things people are really having issues with, don't really seem to be addressed here. There's definitely not a single quality of life change. The only thing they really did feature-wise was some of those balance changes to enemies, but stash limit and carry weight is all exactly the same. In addition, there's no additional options on PC or anything like that. An issue I personally had with the game not saving display settings doesn't seem to be quite addressed yet. And just all in all, I think seeing these patch notes makes me a little bit concerned. There was actually a previous patch for this game on October 30th. It didn't seem like there were as many bug fixes in that one, but rather it was just more to announce that the Atomic Shop was opened, and of course the game released on all platforms on that day. But even still, in the 6 days from that previous patch, we don't have a ton to show for it. The game now comes out in 11 days, and there's a lot more bugs within it. And for me at least, this is probably the first moment I'm actually maybe on that boat of, oh, are they gonna have enough time to fix everything? Like, I think they're doing a good job at actually prioritizing bugs over quality of life features. Yeah, we all want the quality of life features because, well, some of them are pretty freaking essential, like a push to talk button. But I can't really fault Bethesda for focusing on things that are causing people to literally not be able to play this game first. But even within that category of bugs, a lot of the reported ones are certainly not on this list. And one thing I'm actually really thinking about or curious about, I have to imagine this will affect review scores. If this game does actually launch with fairly fundamental features missing, like a push-to-talk button or things along those lines, I imagine those who review this on PC will take notice at that. It's a social game, and those are pretty fundamental features to be in a game where you're meant to interact with others. So that's like the bulk of the news, but outside of that, there's actually a few other things to consider and that I want to highlight. If you pre-ordered Fallout 76 just to get into the beta, and let's say you're not super impressed with the game, cancel your pre-order like right now as you're watching this video. Reportedly, a lot of outlets are actually charging people for their pre-orders, but even further, it probably means that we'll likely get a preload option in the coming days. It seems like now things are kind of getting locked in. So far, it seems like there was actually a charge from maybe Bethesda itself as well as GameStop, but I'm just going off Reddit posts, so who actually knows? But judging by the number of posts on this, it certainly seems like people are getting charges. And one final thing I just kind of want to highlight in this video, while working on this, I wanted to try and find if Bethesda was giving any responses to a lot of people's concerns about Fallout 76, especially PC things, because these weren't glitches. It's not like not having push-to-talk was something that was broken about the game. It was a feature they simply didn't include. Is that something they're going to end up including? Have they talked about this? Well, first and foremost, I think the fact that after spending an hour or so looking for these posts, I could only find a handful is kind of reflective of Bethesda's current communication status. A lot of people, myself included, have been pretty vocal about how this area of the company could use some improvement and has needed this for months at this point. I know based on just their actual postings, they've actually hired a number of additional people in the community team, and as far as actual responses go, we have a couple. One of their new associate community managers actually did give a response on Bethesda.net forums a couple of days ago, saying, "Rest assured, we see all the suggestions and bug reports posted in the forums, on Reddit, Twitter, etc., and are actively working to make this a better experience for all of you. Our team has been working incredibly hard to find and address all of the bugs that have been reported across all platforms, as well as log any and all suggestions we see and take them back to the developer. Game development is an intricate process with a lot of moving gears and people involved. I promise we're listening to everyone, and thank you all for your patience on this." So yeah, it's like basically PR talk, not saying a ton, but for me at least, I find posts like this considerably more reassuring than nothing. I think this is a great example of handling situations like the one we have right now with Fallout 76's PC beta correctly. Outside of that, I actually saw that the official Bethesda Game Studios account responded to a Reddit post on ultra-wide support, or 21.9. Apparently this game's having a ton of issues as far as ultra-wides go. I don't personally have an ultra-wide, but they do say here that we are planning on supporting 21.9 post-launch, but for now it's best to run in windowed mode. Windowed mode has its own plethora of issues, so that's not the greatest solution as the game stands. Either way, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the Fallout news in this video, but outside of that, I do want to share today's psychology fun fact of the day. So the area of psychology I'm actually interested in, that I hopefully am going to go to grad school for, we're in the business and psychology intersection and kind of a marketing related thing, specifically known as consumer psychology. So unfortunately, the university I go to presently has very little in this field. I'm pretty much on my own on anything business and psychology related, but every once in a while, a class will have something slip through that is surprisingly relevant to exactly what I want to do. A big question I see a lot of people often have is, how does advertising actually work? It's something I honestly thought about a while ago. Like, how much attention do you actually pay to commercials? When you see it on screen, you probably have either seen it already or you just kind of tune it out and go on your phone or talk to somebody. This is particularly important as far as things like billboards go. Well, in reality, a lot of this advertisement works more in implicit or unconscious methods, or things that you just don't really realize are going on. Now, every once in a while, there probably is an advertisement that does pop up and you're genuinely interested in it and make a decision because you saw that in that moment. But a lot of times, the way this actually plays out is not as obvious or in your face. For example, advertising a lot of times is just about brand awareness. In your head, you create an association between this brand name and this kind of thing, whether it be royal or highly regarded, expensive, and sophisticated. Advertising plays a really big role in creating those associations and how you think of things when you see them in other contexts. So maybe seeing a BMW commercial doesn't inspire you in that moment to go out and actually buy a BMW, but the role it actually plays is how you perceive that brand. And maybe later on, when you actually are considering shopping for cars, you see one and you're like, hey, maybe I'll check that out. And really the takeaway I'm trying to convey here is that advertisement has way more of a delayed effect. A lot of times advertisers are playing the long con. I think I'm going to have a lot more psych fun facts in this category again because I find it personally interesting. But as always, again, I thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you found this video informative in maybe more ways than one. And tomorrow I will be live streaming the beta, so you can expect that and look forward to it. But I also will have a regular video up right after the beta does end. As always, again, I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys all next time. Later.